you, Minister. Very challenging areas, rising young population, jobs, at the same time, pressure to create greater growth to meet that rising expectations. This is the area that has been touched on by the Prime Minister's session and other sessions. And what does the government need to do to speed it up? The investors are lining up. They recognize the opportunities that are there for the development of the agriculture sector. But there's a big but. And you already highlighted quite a few, like a balancing act between land reform and taking into place against keeping an eye on natural resources as well. So, you know, quite a complex, long-term, but I think the investors need to know what to expect in the coming years. There is a project, before we open it up, perhaps a little few words for this holistic approach that's been applied to this most ambitious project. And we've touched on it briefly in the course of the day, but perhaps you could just say a little bit more about it, on how you can see it can be speeded up with the private investment encouraged to be part of it.
Thank you very much. Sharing a podium with a professor is very difficult. We think, I'm a farmer, and therefore my forte is talking about agriculture. But it is at the stage of our development, taking from what the Honorable Minister has said, at the stage of Tanzania's development, if we don't transform our agriculture, achieving what you said this morning, a growth rate of 10%, which will be just about right to sustain our growth towards being a middle-income country, will be virtually impossible. Because at this stage, we have too many people involved in agriculture, and at the same time, the other sectors can't grow as fast to be able to achieve that 10%. But from the agricultural sector, we see what the Honorable Minister has said. The urbanization is a key area of opportunity, in the sense that 9 billion people have got to be fed, many of them not growing food, but they need food because they will be in urban areas. So for the farmers, this is a very good opportunity. Raw materials are going to be required for the factories in the urban areas. Again, for the farmers, this is a very good opportunity. And Tanzania has the competitive and comparative advantage to take advantage of these opportunities because of the land and the water and the other geographical location of our country. So Tanzania has realized this and has put agriculture at the top of the economic agenda. We have an agricultural sector development program which is already operational. The vast majority of the farmers in Tanzania are smallholder. I mean, 97% are smallholder. So any development program which looks at agriculture in Tanzania, for sure, has to focus on the development of the smallholder. Otherwise, it won't make sense. And therefore, the agricultural sector development program has looked at the smallholder. But what we found 5 years down the line after implementing the agricultural sector development program is that this smallholder has to be linked to the value chain. And that if you want to take advantage of the market opportunities, then the smallholder must be linked to the input market and must be linked to the output market. Linkage has to happen with the private sector. And this is very, very critical to understand. And we have to find mechanisms in which we can link the smallholder with the large private sector. And we developed Kilimo Kwanza as a holistic approach. Kilimo Kwanza, for those who Swahili is not a first language, roughly means agriculture first, roughly. It means much more, but it roughly means agriculture first. But it was a holistic approach to transform our agriculture. But even with Kilimo Kwanza, we felt that there needed to be a focus. And that's where the corridor concept, the agricultural corridor concept, came into play. This is a concept which was developed and presented to the World Economic Forum last year here in Dar es Salaam. It was picked up, and at the forum, the private sector and the public sector decided that we needed a clear investment blueprint. We called it a blueprint. I'm not sure it's a blueprint, but we called it a blueprint. A clear blueprint which says what are the opportunities and what are the sort of investments which are required, and how the public and the private sector can be players together with the development partners to address the needs of the smallholder farmer. And this is where the Southern Agriculture Growth Corridor of Tanzania was born. And this corridor has got what we call basic backbone infrastructure. We have the Tazara Railway, which comes from the Dar es Salaam port to Zambia. We have a road which connects us to Zambia and Malawi and DRC. In this area, we have most of our big rivers. And in Tanzania, we have what we used to call the big six regions, the regions where most of the food is produced in Tanzania. And 5 of the big 6 of the regions are in this corridor. So the idea was that start on this corridor, and even within the corridor, because the corridor area, if you look at it, is a little bit larger than Italy. So even within the corridor, you can't say that you can develop the whole corridor at the same time. So we are focusing on clusters, and within those clusters, you see all efforts going into a cluster and looking at how you can develop that cluster for the benefit of the smallholder, for the benefit of the community, and for the benefit of people who are going to invest in the value chain. The blueprint has been prepared, and it is, for those who have computers, it's online, www.africacorridors.com and SAGCOT. And it is there giving the opportunities which are there, which have been mapped actually in areas where we can start and in areas where we can continue. This model, we think, can be replicated in other corridors within the country. It can be replicated in other corridors in other countries. There is a Beira corridor in Mozambique. There is a corridor which is being developed in Vietnam. And we know there's a corridor which may be developed in Ghana. So this, we think, can be replicated. But at the end of the day, we will take 2 million people out of poverty. We will develop 420,000 jobs, and we will develop 350,000 hectares of land, which is available because we have mapped it out, without touching any land which belongs to the smallholders. But at the same time, what we are saying that the smallholders already have land, only that the productivity in Tanzania is so low, and the starting point is to improve the productivity of the farmers in Tanzania. We are very glad that the development partners and the private sector locally and internationally have taken to this program. It was launched by our president in Davos last month, and we already are seeing people coming in to look at the opportunities. Chair, these are an innovative approach which we think will work, because we have had a lot of interventions in Tanzania on agriculture, but they have been uncoordinated. And one of the fortes of this program is that it will be coordinated. The Agricultural Council of Tanzania has been running what we've called the Tanzania Agricultural Partnership in the last 4 years. And the corridor concept is also modeled around this Tanzania Agricultural Partnership, where we bring together the farmers, the local government, central government, development partners, private sector, local and international, all working together in a partnership agreement and answering to the needs of the smallholder. I think as a way of introduction, we'll stop there. Thank you.
I think that's pretty impressive. I have seen the blueprint, and it is a blueprint. At what point, I mean, it's, if it's executed, it's very impressive. It's approximately the size of Italy, and it's hoping to inject funds of $3.4 billion in public and private investment, which includes donor support of only 50 million. So what point, 2 questions. What point does the blueprint become an execution project? And secondly, how much of that investment do you expect to come from the private sector?
Yeah, execution is started. Implementation is started. So it is a blueprint, but at the same time, it is, you see, what we are saying is that it's the farmers and the private sector who are going to implement this program. And implementation has started because we have started seeing investment into the corridor. What is important is that there are 2 things which will unlock, we think, this initiative. A coordination, and we are setting up, we have started setting up a coordinating secretariat, because this aspect of bringing together all these parties needs quite a lot of coordination, and this is a very important aspect. And secondly, what we call innovative finance. And that is why we have a catalytic fund which has been set up, and we are very glad that development partners, starting with USAID, which announced contribution into the fund at Davos, have started contributing into the fund. We want to raise $50 million to leverage $500 million on 1 to 10, and we want $500 million of private investment to go in there. The catalytic fund is there to actually go, the word is catalytic, to catalyze the private sector to come in, because there are certain investments which the private sector will not do. And it's like the last mile investment, say, at a 10-kilometer road. Maybe you need a connection to electricity. Maybe you need the organization of an outgrower system. Maybe you need to unlock an irrigation scheme. These are things which the private sector would not want to do at the outset, but if they are done, then you would have investment coming in. And this fund will be managed by a fund manager in order to look at the investment. The only condition is that the investment must be responsible, must be sustainable, and must answer to the needs of the smallholder. If it does not fit those conditionalities, then it will not be assisted by the catalytic fund.
I'd like to open the floor for a couple of questions before we end the session.